So the at the final stage, when he's ascending higher and higher up, we were discussing what happens when you come down to that level, and then you would again recoil back to the level of a consciousness where you are struck with a few obstacles. The other thing is that no, you ascend further, and he's saying that if you are in a very deep meditative state, obviously nobody is going to disturb you. In Kashmiri Saiva Darshana, primarily there are different details of samadhi, but there are two different kinds of samadhis they talk about. One is the Unmilana Samadhi, the other one is the Nimilana Samadhi. Nimilana Samadhi is that I sit here and I completely switch off my indriyas to the external reality. I close my eyes. I shut off all my Gyanendriya sense organs, and I deeply meditate on the truth of my own existence, the pure consciousness. The other one is that you actually engage with the external reality, which is a must in the life of a person who is still discharging some of his duties. In that Unmilana Samadhi, he is kind of a witness. He is everywhere, and yet at the same time, he is nowhere in the external world, even though his indriyas are attending to different objects of sense perception. He is not affected by it. He is not, he doesn't fall a victim to their influence. He sort of remains within himself and connects with everything. This connection is just a manner of speaking because actually he is not affected by any of these. He is at a deeper level of his consciousness. So there are these two kinds of samadhis they talk about. So here what he's trying to say that in the Sutra number 32, we have just touched upon it. The commentaries we had not touched. Tat prabhutavapya nirashah sambetru bhavat tat prabhuttau api anirashah. This is how we'll break that word. So, Sisti, Sthiti, and Laya. Okay. So there are these three states, Jagrata or Swapna and Sushupti, all the states. And then because of these changes, there will be different kind of prabhrittis, different kind of movements, variations, vikaras of the mind. But there are two ways in which you are conscious of anything. There is a particular mode of consciousness, a particular mode of meditation or attention when you are self-aware. The other times you are not self-aware, you are aware, you are in your senses. Like in our dream state, we are seeing a dream. There is some kind of consciousness, but not, we are not in control. We see a lot of things which just appear before our mind. Similarly, you may be absent-minded so far as your self is concerned, but you are attentive. You are in a classroom and you are talking to your students, you are talking to your children, you're interacting with people in a train, or you're conscious, you're very conscious. But you are not self-aware. You do not have a larger awareness of who you are. That is how we forget a lot of other responsibilities when we are attending to something because we are lost there. That is one. So you are aware of many other things. With some effort and habit and some practice, we can also do it. But there is another deeper level of self-awareness where we are aware of ourselves not as a person with a bundle of responsibilities, but we are aware of ourselves as pure consciousness. We are aware of our spiritual identity. Our spiritual identity is completely different because that identity has not too many adjectives. It's just a pure self-aware consciousness. Pure consciousness cannot be unaware of itself. So that is the kind of self-consciousness, if you talk about it. He's saying that pravrittau api anirashaha. Nirashaha means here chalana, movement. There are let's imagine two ladies enter into a mall. One mother's child is not well. They are both friends. So one lady asked the other one, where are you going? She said, I'm going for shopping. Oh, you're really going to the mall? Can I come along with you? Because she has a car. And then they drive together. She's telling a lot of things. The other one is very quiet and nicely listening. And the moment they go to the mall, the other lady is doing a lot of window shopping. This lady is concerned about her child health. Or there is a particular thing her baby needs for an examination or anything. See, particular shops she would go and she'll pick it up. And she has no interest in anything else. But she's going there. She's not affected. And her consciousness is not bichalita, is not bikara prapta, she's not troubled by good, bad, ugly things happening in the mall because she's just concerned about picking up the medicine. Similarly, here, I'm just giving, for the lack of a good example, I just picked that up, where you're attentive to your self-awareness, you are not troubled by different kinds of movements of the mind because of different avasthas or different states. That is the simple point he's trying to make. So, first question you would ask me is there any avastha bheda in Atma? Is there any change, any vikara? No. So what do you mean by avastha bheda? Sopadhika. It's like a superimposition. Like a lady becomes a police officer and then she becomes a mother, then she becomes a daughter, then she becomes a sister, and she behaves differently. But she's just one individual, isn't it? Similarly, this Atma avastha bheda is sopadhika. This much is easy to understand. So even though you have Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya, and different kinds of waves of thoughts would emerge in your mind depending on what kind of roles and responsibilities you assume, this yogi is not affected by all this. Okay. Now let's look at the commentary so that we can save time instead of doing free-flowing ruminations or meditations on the meaning of the sutra. Will go by how the great scholars have meditated on it in a very organized way. We'll start with the last one. Nanu shushti sthiti pralayanam paraswara bhedena yogena. You have shushti, sthiti, and a pralaya. Not only of in the samsara at the samasti, but also in individual lives, you always have beginnings and middle points and ends. Swatma swarupa anyathatvam ayati iti asangam opoho nartham aha tat prabhuto api anirashaha sambetru bhavat. Shriti, Shishti, Sthiti, and Laya. The beginning and the middle person and the end person. Okay, and the doubt is what happens. Different kinds of prabhrityas are there. He's saying no, he's not affected by it. And then he's saying Sriti, Sthiti, Layanam Anyunya Bheda Unmadane Satyapi. What is Anyunya Bheda? It's called Anyunya Bhava in Nyaya Sastra. What is Anyunya Bhava? If I say this is a highlighter, right? And this is, let's imagine, I'm just for the heck of medicine. This is medicine. Medicine is not highlighter, and highlighter is not medicine. This is Anyunya Bhava. Ghato pato na. A is not B, B is not A. So the abhava of V, non-B is there in A, and non-A is in B. B cannot be A cannot be B. That is Anyunya Bhava. Absence of one particular in another particular, in a very logical language, to be very simple. So he's saying Anyunya Bheda Unvadane Satyapi. So even if you have Anyunya Bhava, Sriti, Sthiti is not equivalent to Sisti, and Laya. Creation, sustenance, and destruction are three different states of existence. Three different states, and they're different from each other. That is acceptable. Yoga vastamba salinaha yoginaha. The one who is established in that meditation in the yoga, yoginaha sambitri bhavad, turya chamatkarad, upalabdhi swabhavataha pratyutihi naiva bhavati. He is not disturbed, pratyuti. You say achyuta. Achyuta means absolutely is undisturbed. He is not Chyuta, he is Achyuta. Prachuta means prakarshana in a Chyuta. He is dislodged very easily from where he is. Prachuti abhavat means he cannot be dislodged from his state of meditative equanimity. That state of, he is in a state of being undisturbed in the sense he is unaffected. That's one of the goals that all of us have in spiritual life. How can I go beyond the restless moments and the anxieties and hopes and aspirations? These are all disturbances in us. Atacha avidyatmaka bhava prapanchasya. This bhava is sansara, prapancha, that expansion of that, you see, is born out of what? Ignorance. Sansara is because of the misunderstanding that all this is real. That is how we are trapped here. Sambetri bhavat turya chamatkarat upalabdru svabhavataha. So he's saying athasa avidyatmaka bhava prapanchasya sansarasya vinase jate sati. So the sansara may be born, may be created, may be destroyed. Then jate sati yoginaha atma svabhava no pranashyati. The yogi is not dislodged from his swarupa jnana, from his self-awareness. He's not troubled. Generally, what happens is that you have chosen to be, let's imagine, an engineer or an academic or a lawyer. So you have chosen a certain frame of life and you have established yourself there. And suddenly you meet a friend who is a businessman and is making millions, but he was not a good student like you. He may not be intellectually as rich as you are, but he has fancy cars. And for a second, you get disturbed. Oh, really? You bought this car because you cannot buy that because you are an intellectual. Your job is not to make too much money. You excel in that intellectual field. You can have this thought process. Why am I giving this example is that we generally get disturbed looking at a lot of things which we have not chosen. We may not have chosen that, but when we see this, we are not ready to do what is required, what we have to do to reach there. For example, you want to be a super rich person. What is he dealing with? You may not be willing to do what he does to be so rich, but you're just looking at his phala, and then you get a little distracted. All these distractions are part and parcel of a normal life, but the yogi is not disturbed. He's in Swarupa, but remember, Swarupa Avasthanam word is also there in the Yoga Sutras. It's also there in Kashmiri Saiva Darshana in a different way. But the Swarupa here, there is everything other than what is samsara. There's a complete rejection of the external reality that you have to flush it out of your consciousness. Here in Kashmiri Saiva Darshan, the external reality doesn't exist independent of you because you are Paramashiva. You are trying to be there. So Paramashiva is both Vishwamaya and Vishwotirna. He is both immanent and is transcendent. This is the beauty thing that you have to understand between Vedanta and Tantra, Kashmiri Saiva Darshana and strict Vedanta. Strict Vedanta is rejectionist. If you look at the darshan of Sri Aurobindo, integral Vedanta. So everything, he says, no, all life is yoga. There's nothing called rejecting something. You cannot say this is not relevant and this is relevant. Not like that. You will have your viveka, but you have to divinize everything. You bring in the God consciousness and then you lead your life. Similar in Kashmiri Shaiva Darshan, this is very inclusive. It's not a rejectionist thing. Therefore, whenever I'm mentioning he's not, that's why he's saying Srustyadinam Prabrutta Api. Unmadanepi na asya yoginaha sambhatri bhava. So the commentary is saying, because of this, binase sati, even though it's created and it's destroyed, yoginaha atma swabhava no pranashyati. His self-awareness, his atma swabhava is not affected by it. Tasmat utpati vinasa rahityad. Because his consciousness doesn't have a beginning or an end. It is that nitya consciousness awareness. Swarupa gata paramarthika vinasho na bhavati. Now you have to understand one aspect here and not get confused. Thought processes are like waves, they will arise and they will fall. When I'm talking about Swarupa Jnana in Vedanta or Kashmiri Saiva Darshana, Swarupa Ababodha, we are not referring to a thought process. We have to understand this critical difference. It's not a wave of a few thoughts. Like you have Sambedana, you have a cup of lovely coffee and you have that experience of the taste. It's very good coffee. It has a beginning, it has an end. It's a process associated with the brain, with your mind. When you are talking about that Swarupa Sthiti or Atmajnana, it's not a state associated with your brain. No. If so, it cannot be permanent. Brain is not permanent. Mind is not permanent. So how can you have something which is a product of the mind, which is associated with the mind, to become permanent? So here we are talking about something which is paramarthik, which is beyond this. It's self-evident. It's self-awareness. It's pure consciousness. Then only can we establish non-dualism. If we reduce Shiva consciousness to a state of our brain, the state of the brain cannot be same as the universal God consciousness, which pervades, which is everywhere, which encompasses, embraces everyone. The individual consciousness cannot become universal consciousness if the individual consciousness is understood as a state of the mind. Of course, we have to move through state of a mind through the sadhana kala. We'll play different games to silence, to discipline, all these mental states to go to a higher level. But in that level, when we get it, this is no more a state of the mind. We go beyond the mind, we go beyond the brain. Even though we would be in this body mind complex, we would be beyond this. So we would be within it and we would be beyond it. That is that Vishwamaya and Vishwatirna Avastha. Therefore, he is saying, Tasmat Utpati Vinasa Rahityat Surupagata Paramarthika Vinasho no bhavati. So that Vinasha is not a Vastava Vinasha because it's a Nitya thing. How can it be terminated? Ataiva Uktam Cha Chidrupasya Avinasi Dharmatve. So there is a couplet he's quoting, Vigyaptirna Vinashosti. That self-awareness, that God consciousness, that is Vigyapti. Gyapti and Vigyapti in Advaita Vedanta, there are different schools of thought. Some people like Gyapti is kind of simple awareness, Vigyapti is specific, detailed, or you can say Vishishta Jnana in a way, Vigyapti. They have Brahmagara Vritti. Some people say Samanyatah Brahma Jnana. And then you will have Vishesha Aparoksha Anubhuti, Vigyapti. Vigyapti no Vinashosti. There is no terminism. Why? Binastepi Sarirake. So you might have the thought process, the awareness which is associated with the brain might get terminated. Abhave Suryakantasya Naivasti Savitu Shati. Now the example is very interesting. I want to dwell on it exactly for half a minute, so that you understand what is this example of Surya Kantamani. There is this belief that we had two kinds of precious stones. And there is a mention of it in different Nyaya texts. They said that Chandrakanta Mani, the moonstone, is like a prativandhaka of Agni Yoga. So you are trying to add fire to a particular lamp or anything, but it will not burn. Why? There is a Chandrakanta Mani. It is symbolic representation of some prativandhaka. So if the obstacle is there, so even if you are trying to set fire to a lamp, it doesn't burn because there is a Chandrakanta Mani. So that is a pratibandhaka. But Suryakantamani is a uttejaka. Even though you may have a moonstone, you get a Suryakantamani. It's moonstone, that could be called sunstone. I don't know what it is in English. So you get a Suryakantamani. It's a luminous sunstone or whatever you call it. If you bring it, the pratibandhaka, the kind of obstacle it creates, the Suryakantamani neutralizes that pratibandhaka. What can I give as a very everyday example? Just imagine that your son, or there's a child in the classroom, he's very disturbed, very restless. So he wants to study, he has gone to the school, but then he has a smartphone. That is the Chandrakantamani, Pratibandhaka in his being attentive. So he'll always fiddle with his social media account, watch different reels or whatever clips. Children are very fond of it these days. And that is the source of their ADHD, whatever you call it. Now, the teacher enters the class and is a very strict teacher. He's going to punish you. He might call up your parents. If it's an Indian school, he can go to the extent of shouting at you. Now, that teacher is the Suryakantamani. Even if you have a phone, you will not dare to open it. That is how it happens. That Chandrakantamani and Suryakantamani. That is what he's mentioning. So, you have a Pratibandhaka and you have a Uttejaka. The Uttejaka will neutralize. The Uttejaka will neutralize whatever is the obstacle. You may have a few obstacles in life, but then you have a Uttejaka. You may not like to do something, but there is a huge bonus involved, then you do it. Now he is mentioning Abhave Suryakantasya Nevasti Sabituhu Khyati. So there is a Suryakanta Mani is not there. So the fire will have some problem in burning, right? Suryakanta Mani is not there, and there is not one, maybe there are 20 Chandrakanta Manis. Does it affect the sun? No. Why? The sun is self-luminous. It doesn't depend on anybody setting fire to it. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. Everything gets light from that sun. So it's self-evident. That truth is self-evident. Similarly, now drashtantika. What was the context in which this was mentioned is self-awareness is not, that pure self-awareness is not dependent on any external factors for its presence and sustenance. It derives its sustenance from itself. It doesn't derive any sustenance from anything else. Once we have that Atma-jnana, we have that self-realization, then you don't need to go and sit in a satsang or read a book or listening to a guru, then only you are going to be self-luminous. No. Once you have that Atma-jnana, it's verily with you. You might pay respect to the Acharya, the Guru who had introduced you to the subject matter. You might still go to the temple, but you are already self-realized. You have become independent. That's how he's mentioning. Then you are not at all affected in samsara. Kasmacha iti aha spandakarikayam. In Spandakarika, now there's another example is being given. Natu yo antarmukho bhavaha sarvajnatva गुणास्पदम तस्य लोपः कदाचित् स्यात् अन्यस्य अलम्भनात्. The person who is inwardly oriented means antarmukha, means he's all the time having the Swarupa jnana. Antarmukho bhavaha sarvajnatva gunaspadam, and this Atma is sarvajna vibhu padartha. He's all aware, he's aware of everything. That Atma is sarvajna. Again and again we have been saying that Atma is aware of everything because it pervades everything. Tasya lopaha, that consciousness never gets terminated. Kadachit syat, never happens. Because anyasya anupalambhanat. Because see, it's not dependent on an external factor, and this is unavoidable. It is self-evident, it is self-luminous, and therefore that person is not affected by different modes or phases of mental activities or connectivity with the external world. Desa kaladi vachinnasya karyasya eva lopa bhavati. See, for example, desa kaladi avachinna, limited by space and time. So you watch a movie, you will feel horror movie. So you are experiencing fear. You pay money to actually experience that fear. So you'll go and see a movie, Alien 1, 2. You remember college days. You see this movie and you enjoy the horror movie. Huh? It's teenagers. That fear goes after the movie is over. You anyway know this is a movie, but you want to just have fun about experiencing that fear, that anxiety by looking at it. You know this is an artificial thing. That will have a beginning and an end. किंतु यो अंतर्मुख भावः सर्वज्ञतादीनां गुणानाम् आश्रयो असि तस्य विलोपः कदापि न एव उपपद्यते. So you know all the qualities and attributions, whatever you're saying, the foundation of it is that Atmajnana, that self-awareness. You cannot remove the foundation. The wall will always be there. You can replace one Hollywood movie with a South Indian movie, with a Bollywood movie or Hindi movie or a Bengali movie or Korea movie, whatever. You can keep changing the movies or even see a wildlife movie or a documentary. But that screen on which all these pictures are projected stays. That cannot be removed. That is the foundation. That is the platform. Katham na bhavati, that cannot be removed. He is saying, Chidrupa Vyatiriktasya Anyasya Anupalabdhi Eva. What is Chidrupa? That's Chaitanya Rupa. Other than that, there is nothing which is existent, which is fundamentally real. Now, like for example, in physics, I keep giving this example. You dip a stick in water and it looks bent. And you keep changing its location, and where that bending occurs, that also keep changing. You take it out, you know it's a straight stick, but it looks as if it bends once you dip it in water. Similarly, all these experiences we have about everything, what are the foundation of it? Is that pure consciousness, that Atma. Other than that, there is no state where there is no Paramashiva. There is nothing where Brahman is not there. Brahma Satya Jagana Mithya means what? That Brahman is real and Jagan is completely nonsensical, nothing of that sort. Brahman is, the sansara is not false. Sansara is like that bent stick, but you have to have that straight stick for the stick to appear as a bent stick. The Brahman has to be there so that we can look at sansara and we can discuss whether it's real or unreal. But what is real is unchangeable. There's no change in it. Similarly, this Atmajnana is the foundation. The screen doesn't change. Movies can change. Projections can change. Desa Kala, therefore, there is another couplet he's quoting. Asya anupalabdhireva tasya eva hi sarvatra sada upalabdhir bhavati. That Chidrupa, that Chaitanya, that film screen is there, then it appears. Different kinds of movies are projected. That Atma Chaitanya is all pervading in all of us. That is that universal consciousness. And as I just mentioned, that this is beyond the changes in the brains, the Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya, because this is not about states of mind. It's a universal consciousness. Because our non-dual philosophy will take a beating if we accept that state of mind is the Atmajnana we are talking about. Atmajnana is not a state of the mind, even though state of the mind could be one upaya, one medium through which we are trying to access that reality. Once we reach there, it's no more a state of the mind. The mind will lose its relevance. We might come back to the mind. But that is not describable. That's ineffable bliss. We cannot describe, we cannot capture that in words. For lack of any other way of talking about it, we might write a poem, we might use a few sentences, we might, sort of blabber in words about how beautiful it was in your diaries. But that's beyond whatever you write there. That's beyond whatever we might discuss about it. देशकाल क्रियाकारेव अवच्छिन्नेषु वस्तुषु अनवच्छिन्न स्वरूप अवच्छिन्न रूपत्वम् आसितस्य बहिर्स्थितेः. So he's saying देशकाल क्रियाकारेहि avachinneshu. So whatever you're talking about, realities which are defined, restricted, limited by desha, kala, and kriya, location, space, and any activity. Anavachinna rupaha tvam bhasi tasya vahistitehe. So, what is actually pervading in all this is that self awareness. That is not affected. You can have thoughts about X, Y, Z, but that Atmajnana is not dependent on any objective perception. It's beyond all that. Bheda sarvagya sarvagyatadinam jnanadinam cha nastyami jnanasyeva dharmataya chidrupasya stitir yataha. Then he's giving an example as to why all these kinds of things, all kinds of thoughts you have, all kinds of awareness that you have, okay, they are not permanent. But that chidrupa jnana, that is permanent. That is that thing which is like a substratum of all thoughts, all ideas, all changes. Why we were discussing is tat praprutto api anirashaha samvatri bhavat. This sutra number 32. So the jnani, the atmajnani, may engage in external realities, may get into the world and interact with others, but he is not. But he is not at all affected by any of this. Okay. So that is the critical thing. That is the beautiful thing that we talked about. Now we are going to the next verse, next sutra. What is anirashaha? Anirashaha, there is Varadaraja mentions anirashaha swo sambetri bhavat aprachutihi nijat. He doesn't get dissociated from his self-awareness. He doesn't get dislodged from his self-awareness. He might. That is how he's saying anirashaha, means there is this fear, right, that you're achieving a very high state of meditation, and then you'll go and engage in samsara. What happens to that? You will lose that concentration. Yes, you lose your concentration. But once you are in that unmana state, you are established yourself that Shiva Vyapti, when you have gone, we have already discussed that. The samana stage, we may recoil, come back. But once you are in that unmana stage and you have that universal consciousness, then that bheda vrittis become powerless. They don't trouble you. Even though you may wander in the samsara, you are not affected by it. What happens to that fellow? What kind of meditation he does at that level? This is what is dealt in the sutra number 33. We are coming, slowly. Another 7, 8, another about 12 sutras are there. I think there are 45 sutras in the third chapter. We'll be finishing it very quickly, slowly, in another few days. So he's mentioning that in the verse number 33, there is an introduction in the commentaries. Let me look at it. Vishwa Srishti Layeshu Niskampa Yoginaha. Niskampa means one who is not disturbed. Yoginaha Lokavata. Sukha Sukhayor. Sukha and Asukha. Yeah, Sukha Dukhayor. There is part of Veda. Sukha Sukhayor api samvedanam na bhavati iti nirdisati. Sukha Sukhayor bahira mananam. So he is not at all affected by Sukha Dukhadi Vritti, feeling of pleasure and pain. First of all, he doesn't get dislodged from his state of equanimity. And the second, fear and anxiety which might appear in the mind of a sadhaka, like all of us, we are looking at this chapter. What happens to that guy at that level? He's saying no. He is not affected by anything. And there are two states. One is a state in which you are actually moving through experience of pleasure and pain, but your self-awareness remains undisturbed. That is what is dealt with in this sutra. The next one would be where you are perennially in that self-blissful state or self-sachidananda vritti. You are in that brahmakara vritti. Sachidanandoham, Shivoham, Shivoham. So the idea of in Sukha Dukkha, even getting closer to you or affecting, influencing your consciousness, that also will not appear. So the verse number, the sutra number 33 and 34. The 34 deals with a state in which you are going there, but you are not affected by them. Whereas the next sutra will deal with that you are completely self-absorbed in that kaivalya thing. That will look at them both. Sukha sukhayor bahir mananam. So this is the sutra number 33. Vedya sparsha jatayoho bahihi. Niladivat idanta bhasa rupataya mananam samvedanam natu laukikavat ahanta sangsparshanena yogi prashanta puryashtaka pramatra bhavaha katham sukha sukhabhyam sprishyate. This is Bhattakalata's brief summary of this sloka. Let's look at it. It's a beautiful way to explain it. He's saying Vedya sparsha jata yoho bahihi niladivata. Now, when you look at blue color, green color, yellow color, you're going to a film hall and you see a lot of movies. In a very state of depression or in a state of excitement, like you look at children, they go watch a movie, the cartoon movies, they get super excited because they identify with these movies. They forget their own realities. But you're a grown-up person, you have a good understanding. There is a scene of violence or anything, or there's a romantic song. You're aware of your state. You've gone there for 100 minutes, 120 minutes. If an Indian movie, maybe 140, 50 minutes. That's all. You know you are there. You have paid money to be there for a while, and you're watching and you're having fun. And if it's home or you're watching Netflix or something, you can switch it off and take a phone call, attend to some mail, and then you can go back to watch depending on how much time you have. If you're flying, okay, watch it because you can't go anywhere. But you know that this is in your control. You are not in control of that. Now, similarly, he's saying, Vedya sparsha jatayo vahi niladivat. Now, the blueness, redness, colors that you attribute, you're attributing to what you see. This is red, this is blue. Because you seeing something red, do you become red? Do you say, I have become red because I'm watching something red? Or do you say, I have become green because this is a wildlife movie and I'm just looking at a lot of greenery, I have become green? No. You clearly know these are about an external reality that I'm experiencing. The blueness and greenness, whatever you are experiencing, it's not part of who you are. It's part of what you are watching, what you are seeing. Similarly, the sukha dukkha experiences, you are able to externalize. And we have dealt with that in Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, you know, okay, this is a modification of the mind where I'm calling it pain or I'm calling it pleasure, but I am not this. I'm not the mind. These are emotions. They're emerging and they're vanishing. They'll continue for a while, but I'm none of these. You have that clarity. And that is very important. Sukha sukhayor vahir mananam. So he's saying, idanta bhasa rupataya mananam samvedanam. Natu laukikavat ahanta smarshanena. A normal person, you're watching. It can happen to anyone. I remember as a student, and I was just working in Delhi University, and there was an accident, and suddenly somebody fell off a bus. Some student fell off a bus. Those days it used to be overcrowded, and incidentally, he just suddenly died. And then I remember there was this middle-aged man who was coming on a bike, and he was trembling in fear. I said, "What happened, uncle?" He said, my son, and he ran to that boy who had fallen off, who was dead, and then the police and other people were there. And then he comes back relaxed. Incidentally, this young man who fell off the bus looked exactly like his son. So that is what you have tadatmya. And then now all these experiences in Lokika Vyavahara, we have a clear, close, wrongly identifying with whatever we are experiencing and then attributing whatever emotional states we are passing through to the self. Anatmani atma buddhi. Atasmin tad buddhi. These are not qualities of the self. Sukha dukkha cannot be qualities of the self. Self is beyond sukha dukkha. But then we attribute it to the atma. Anatmani atma buddhi, atmani anatma buddhi. That's what happens. Atasmin tad buddhi. So he's saying, not a laukikavad ahanta sparshanena. You have idanta, aham idam, but that idanta, the external reality is there. Then once you confuse, of course, when you become aham vishwam, you also have that in the level of self-realization. But that is different. It's not attachment. It's a kind of inclusive self-awareness where yourself includes the whole universe. That is sharply different from a state of mind of a normal person who is attached to or averse to external realities depending on his sanskara, his attraction or repulsion. That's a state of ignorance. It's not a state of inclusion. That's not love or compassion. This is attachment and aversion, raga dvesha. So therefore, saying laukivat ahangtas parsanena yogi prashanta puryashtaka pramatri bhava. Now pramatri bhava, pramatri, that knowing self. Okay. Now one is that pramatri bhava, or you as a knower, what kind of knower? Well, I'm a professor, I'm teaching my students, I have this responsibility. That is one pramatri bhava. You are a knower, but you are defined in terms of roles and responsibilities you associate yourself with. And that's a limited self-awareness. Then Puryashtaka. What is Manabuddhi Ahankara and Panchatanmatras? That is Puryashtaka, talking about a Shukshma Sarira. Puryashtaka pramatri bhavaha prashantaha yasya, which has been pacified. You are no more having that identification with the body-mind complex and the assumed roles and responsibilities. You are now identifying with your Swarupa. That is that Paramarthika Pramatri Bhava. That Pramatritva is no different from what is Prama and what is Prameya. That's one, that unified consciousness. We are not talking about it, but that lower order of Pamatri Bhava, which has been pacified. Katham Sukha Sukhabhyam Sprishyate. How can he be affected by Sukha and Dukha, Sukha and Asukha? He cannot be touched. Why? The person who may be affected by Sukha and Dukha is the one who has that limited self-awareness. That fellow misbehaved with me. She did not respect me properly. She is my younger sister. She shouldn't have argued with me. Who is saying this? The one who is identifying himself as a brother, or as a husband, as a son, as a father. Once you are limiting yourself, you become vulnerable. Because whatever is limited is definitely vulnerable. Is vulnerable to different kinds of attacks or different kinds of weaknesses, different kinds of eventualities, because it's not sarvagya and sarvakartitva, all that things are not there. It's not God. But once you are shorn of all these, you have unshackled yourself, you have freed yourself from these self-imposed limitations, and you are in that pure state of being, then you are not troubled. But there is a catch there. It's much easier said than actually realized. And that is all about the path of sadhana. Intellectually, you can understand it, but still the mind goes back to that default mode. Default mode is what? In the normal life of people, default mode is avidya and ignorance. That is the default mode. You'll go back. It's like the tail of a dog. It's always bent and return. You have to return there. The only way you can get rid of that tail is what you do to the Doberman. You remove the tail. Of course, it has a straight tail, but you remove it. How do you remove it? Through jnana, no physical activities, because a jnana has no physical existence. Swarupataha mithya eva. It is an imaginary jail in which we are prisoners. You remember that Hotel California. It's a beautiful song where he says that I wanted to recover my innocence. I wanted to find the back gate. I wanted to escape. But somebody says, we are programmed to receive. You can check out anytime. But you can't escape this place once you get into it. But Vedanta says, no, you can escape. There is escape. Because you believe you are inside this, you are a prisoner. So far we accept Mentally, whatever is imposed on us, we accept it. We are prisoners. The moment we don't accept it, it's like the cyber fraudulent guys, the cyber frauds who call you up and say you are under digital address and this and that, and arrest and this and that, and you say, okay, fine, do whatever. You are doing this, okay, I have done it, so what? No, 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 you just smile. They immediately disconnect. They cannot do anything. They are powerless. There's a beautiful argument by this great ethical thinker, Agnes Heller, writes beautifully. There's a short book she wrote called General Ethics long back as a student. So there was this guy who executed a lot of Jews. She gives the example of that person. And then the judge looks at him when the war crime trials were taking place after the Second World War. They looked at him and they all sympathized. He said, this guy doesn't look that evil. But he was so frightening, isn't it? People were all afraid of him. But he's saying the evil is always banal. I mean, if you look through it, it doesn't frighten you. It becomes powerless. Once you see the truth, the person who is frightening you becomes powerless. This avidya, maya, the samsara, which troubles us so much, becomes powerless once you know the truth about it. And you find, okay, this is a miserable guy. You feel sympathy for his helpless situation. But he has eliminated a lot of people. He had killed a lot of people. So what he's saying, yogi prashanta puryashtaka pramati bhavaha katham sukha sukhabhyam sprishyate. Why should he be affected? Now let's look at the so what are the key thing here that I'll mention? So he's mentioning Vishwa Srishti Layeshu Niskampa Yoginaha Lokavat Sukha Sukhayorapi Samvedanam Na Bhavati iti Nirtisati Sukha Sukhayor Vahir Mananam. So this is the first level, okay? Asya Mahayoga Nishta Purushasya, of the sadhaka who is a Mahayoga Nishta Purusha, Laukika Prani Iva, like a normal person in samsara, Sukha Dukhayor Samvedanam Na Eva Bhavati. He doesn't experience pleasure and pain like a normal person. Why? Satu idanta abhasa rupena niladivat vahir eva samvedanam karoti. He sees sukha dukha, but the way you see this is blue, this is green, but you don't imagine that because I am seeing something green, I have become green. So he might experience sukha and dukha, but he is not experiencing it. Knows this is happening in my mind or in the Manamaya Kosha, this I'm analyzing, this is in the Vijnanamaya Kosha, but he is absolutely free from any kind of entanglement. He's not trapped in all this, even though he would be taking a class. He would be correcting things. He would be counseling, or she will be counseling as a mother. He will be protecting his children as a father. He will be doing all the roles, but he will be self-aware. And then what he say, yato hi swasakti prachuvasya vishyam, because the expansion of his own energy is that Vishwa, right? Swasakti, we have already discussed, it's not about the individual energy, it's about the Shakti of Paramashiva. He identifies with it, and expansion of that Shakti, his whole samsara. There is nothing external, and therefore he's not fascinated by it, he's not troubled by it. Iti sutrarthanayena, by the logic of this particular sutra that we have already done it, sarvam asya ahanta achaditattvena. This is the critical thing. All that you see around, you have that ahanta achadita, that I conscious, the pure I consciousness, not ahankara, that Shiva consciousness. So you remember earlier, we have already discussed it. How do you carry forward the vritti of your samadhi kala, of your realization, into other states like the Jagrita Avastha, Swapna Avastha, Susupti Avastha? You remember that sutra? What was the technique? You are doing meditation for 1 hour, half an hour, you're sitting somewhere doing meditation. How do you carry forward? How do you carry it forward to affect other stages of your being, other stage of your, still you are moving, right, with this body-mind complex. How do you do it? He's saying, irrigate other stage of your being with that Shiva consciousness. That pure consciousness, carry a little of it, irrigate, sprinkle that consciousness in your waking state, in your dream state, and Sushupti, but you don't have any control over this Swapnavastha and Shushruti Avastha, where you will sprinkle that Shiva consciousness in your Jagrit Avastha, and it will slowly trickle down to the subconscious state, so that even in your dream state, you have that spirituality also giving shape to the kind of dreams you would see. You'll stop seeing dreams which are in sharp contradiction to your spiritual aspirations. You will see a lot of spiritual dreams. Why? You're sprinkling your waking state with Shiva consciousness, and also slowly the subconscious mind also gets sprinkled, gets irrigated with that Shiva consciousness. And then also slowly the unconscious mind gets irrigated. When that process is complete, there is complete transformation of your consciousness. Therefore, he's saying, Sutrarthanayena sarvam asya ahanta achadi tatvena. So that is Shiva consciousness. Everything is kind of sprinkled with it. Prakashate. Therefore, Sukha, Dukkha, these are not dharmas of the self, these are not qualities of the self, so that you are not troubled. Ataiva samutirna deha prana puryashtaka pramatra bhavaha yogi anaha. That particular sadhaka, your yogi, who is transcendent the body-mind complex, the Annamaya Kosha, Deha Prana, Pranamaya Kosha, Puryashtaka, Sukshma Sarira, Pramatra Bhava, and the agency associated with these koshas, Yogi Janha, Sukha, Dukkhabhyam, Dharmabhyam, these two states, two orientations, Sukha and Dukkha. Dharmabhyam kathamapi na sprishyati, they are not touched by happiness or sadness, tathacha ahuhu. Vasugupta padaha spandakarikayam. What is saying? Na dukkham, na sukham yatra, na grahyam grahaka, na cha. There is no grahya and grahaka. Na sukha, na dukkha. Grahya grahaka veda. Grahaka is the jivatma. And what is grahya? Sukha dukkha, the anubhava. Neither sukha is there, nor dukkha is there. Then I am suffering. That feeling is also not there. Nachasti mooda bhavopi tadasti paramarthataha. Whatever is there, paramarthataha is not there. You are neither sukhi nor dukhi. Vastutaha tasya tad anuttaratatvam nityamasti. He is in that ultimate state, isn't it? Which is beyond all this. And is always there with him. Yatra na adhyatmika adi dukkham na vishaya sambandhi sukham asti. So what is adhyatmika, adhibhautika, and adhidaivika, trivida tapa? So that mental problem or maybe physical illness, all that, he is not affected by it. Na vishaya sambandhi sukham asti. Vishaya sambandhi, you're having a sweet, you're feeling good. Somebody didn't properly respond to you on phone, you get angry. All these are responses. Responses of not Atma, responses of your mind, purva sanskaras, and expectations, and raga, dvesha, etc. And then the consequences are described as happiness and sadness. Na ghatapatadi rupa grahyam asti kimapi. Therefore, there is nothing, because everything is part of the self. Na cha grahakam aham idam grinhami iti. Then you see, if there is one external reality, then you can say, I am seeing it. Once you are in that Shiva Bhava, is there any reality which is not you? If we have that Shiva consciousness, Shiva is all pervasive, that Bibhu Bhava. By default, we have that universal consciousness. There is nothing outside of us. Therefore, he's saying there is no grahya grahaka bhava. The bhokta becomes bhogya. The self is, we see ourselves in so many mirrors, then we isolate them and segregate them. We see this is sukha, this is dukkha. This is out of some sort of a perturbation of the mind, which is not wise, which is not beyond the limitations of the ego consciousness. And once we sort of drop the ego consciousness, the consciousness becomes pure universal consciousness, and then we are not susceptible to experiencing whatever we may describe as happiness or sadness. So he's saying, Vikalpa ahankara rupatvam avidya rupatvad ahankarasya. Whatever you see, it's essentially because of it's tainted with ignorance, avidya. Therefore, we have the sukha dukkhadi. Natu anena adhishtatri bhavasya What is adhishtatri? What is the foundation? That is that pure consciousness. You see, the film screen, again, I'm going back to that. That's the easiest and the best example to deal with these stories. The screen is not affected by whether there's a romancing going on, it's a wildlife story, there's a crime scene, there is a there's a horror movie, or it's a kids movie, or it's a cartoon movie. The film screen is not affected by any of these. Actually, in reality, you are looking at the film screen and the projections appear as the reality you are dealing with, but they are incidental. What is unavoidable is actually the film screen. What is unavoidable is that self-awareness. But then we look at the superimposed images as the reality, and we do not know how to delve down and dive deeper into self-awareness. That happens when we are able to see through all that is happening to our mind. It's not an easy task, because we have to go beyond the thoughts, and thoughts are what appear as most real to us. Whatever we are thinking about the external reality, actually a bunch of thoughts, bunch of ideas. That is what he's saying. Natu anena adhishtatri bhava, that drik chaitanya. The seer alone is real. Whatever is seen, like dream. You are real. Whatever you see is not real. But you feel, you are frightened, you are happy, you are sad. That is what is mentioning here. Grahakasya abhavaha proktaha ubhaya rupatvacha tasya. That grahya and grahaka, whatever you see, it all becomes that. Bhokta becomes bhogya. Okay. Tad vimuktastu kevali. Of course, we have suddenly come to the timeline. We will take it forward tomorrow. Tad vimuktastu kevali tabhyam. Tad means tabhyam. From there, sukha dukhabhyam visheshana muktaha sanskara matrena api antara sprishtaha anta asangsprishtaha kevali kevalam chinamatra pramatra rupam yasya saha. So first thing is sukha dukhabhyam bahirmanam. You are beyond sukha dukkha, but you are carrying that self-awareness, and then sukha dukkha things, vrittis will happen, but you are not affected. You are in a way taking forward your self-awareness and kind of filtering out unnecessary, unwanted thought processes. That is one state. But then you go to a state where you are only observed in your self-awareness. There is no need to now filter, analyze, quarantine, accept, reject. All these things are not there. Okay. So in that stage, you have that kaivalya, you have a tad vimuktastu kevali tabhyam sukha dukhabhyam. From sukha and dukha visheshena muktaha, you are completely liberated. Saskara matrena api antaha. You see, it's quite possible that, like for example, a person who takes sannyasa, he throws away his sacred thread. Now you have been taught as a child that you have to put it on your ears when you're going to the toilet or the loo. You have already thrown your thread, so you don't have a thread. You don't have any caste or anything. But then if you are going to take a bath or anything, you have this sanskar with you, so you are looking for that thread. It's not there. Shikha sutram paritajya. You are beyond all castes. The sannyasi has no caste. He cannot say I'm a Brahmin or a Kshatriya or a Kais or a Rajput. No, what are you? You don't have any caste. You're just you even do your shraddha. You finish it, last rites. Now he's saying he is sanskara matrana api antar asangsprishtaha. He's not touched inside even by sanskara. No, it doesn't touch him. Kevali kevalam chinamatra pramatritva rupam. That pramatritva is not dependent on the presence of any prameya, because there is no prameya which is external to you. There is no known object to be known through a process of knowing which is outside of you, because you are that self-fulfilled self. This particular thing, we will take it forward tomorrow. We just crossed the timeline, so I'll put an end to my satsang here. Any questions, anything, or we can do the Shanti Mantras. We'll come back and take forward. Any question anyone has?
Swamiji,
Yes.
as you understand, as you said, The self-realization, Atmagana, is a permanent thing. And I can understand it is in state like Sushti, Sthiti, one is self-aware and continues to be self-aware. How about Laya? In that state, this what happens to that Atmagyan? It
Yeah,
it stops. Yes, it
yes,
changes or
yeah,
continues.
yeah. Very good, very good. You see, you have a nitya laya in your deep sleep state. Okay, you have a deep sleep state. Now, Atmagyana, if you're looking at it as a state of the mind, because the mind go to a sleep mode, even that Atmagyana will go to a sleep mode in the deep sleep state. So you will wake up ignorant if you wake up in the physical body. That's why what you are asking is a very relevant question, because let's imagine that there is a Atmagyan here and the whole creation gets terminated. There is pralaya. What happens to him? He doesn't come back. Now, so his Atmajnana becomes Anitya? No. If we are trying to associate it, Atmajnana is, let's say, XA. XA is such that it's associated with X as a quality.